Welcome to Blessed Parables channel. Today, we embark on a journey through one of the most captivating stories in biblical history, the life of King David. From his humble beginnings as a shepherd boy, anointed by Prophet Samuel, to his heroic battle against Goliath and his rise to the throne of Israel, we'll explore his reign, his triumphs, and his trials, including his relationships with his family, his sins, and his unwavering faith in God. Join us as we delve into the legacy of a man after God's own heart and discover how his story continues through his descendants, leading to the birth of Jesus Christ. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to our channel for more amazing content. Sit back, relax, and let's dive into the remarkable saga of King David. David, the youngest son of Jesse, tended his father's sheep in the hills of Bethlehem. His days were filled with the peaceful routine of a shepherd, guiding the flock, playing his harp, and composing songs to God. Unknown to him, his life was about to change dramatically. One day, the prophet Samuel arrived in Bethlehem, sent by God to anoint the next king of Israel. Disguised as a sacrificial ceremony, Samuel's visit caused a stir. He examined Jesse's older sons, but none were chosen by God. When asked if there were more sons, Jesse reluctantly called for David from the fields. As David stood before Samuel, God spoke to the prophet's heart, confirming David as the chosen one. In a private ceremony, Samuel anointed David with oil, declaring him the future king. David, bewildered and humbled, returned to his sheep, his heart aflame with the promise of destiny. King Saul, tormented by an evil spirit, sought relief through music. One of his servants mentioned David, a skilled harpist known for his soothing melodies. Summoned to the palace, David's music brought peace to Saul's troubled mind. David became a regular in the court, earning the king's favor and the admiration of all. Yet his heart remained with his sheep, where he continued to grow in strength and faith. The Philistines threatened Israel, sending forth their champion Goliath to challenge any Israelite warrior. The giant's taunts paralyzed Saul's army with fear. David, visiting his brothers at the battlefield, was incensed by Goliath's defiance against God's people. With unwavering faith, David volunteered to fight Goliath. Rejecting Saul's armor, he armed himself with only a sling and 5 smooth stones. Facing the giant, David proclaimed his trust in God. As Goliath advanced, David slung a stone, striking the giant's forehead and felling him. Israel's army surged forward, and the Philistines were defeated. David's victory catapulted him to fame, earning him a place among Saul's warriors and the deep friendship of Jonathan, Saul's son. David's growing popularity sparked Saul's jealousy. Despite David's loyalty and numerous victories for Israel, Saul viewed him as a threat. In a fit of rage, Saul attempted to kill David with a spear. David narrowly escaped and fled the palace. Thus began David's life as a fugitive. He gathered a band of loyal followers, living in the wilderness and constantly evading Saul's pursuit. Despite opportunities to kill Saul, David refrained, honoring Saul as God's anointed king. Desperate for safety, David sought refuge among the Philistines, Israel's enemies. He struck a deal with Achish, king of Gath, pretending to raid Israelite territories while actually attacking Israel's enemies. His deception earned Achish's trust, allowing David and his men to live in relative peace in Ziklag. During this time, David's leadership and tactical skills flourished. He maintained his integrity, avoiding any actions that would harm his people or dishonor God. Saul's final battle against the Philistines proved fatal. Overwhelmed and wounded, Saul fell on his sword to avoid capture. Jonathan and Saul's other sons were also killed. The news reached David, bringing both sorrow and a complex mix of relief and guilt. David mourned deeply for Saul and Jonathan, composing a lamentation to honor their memory. Despite Saul's pursuit, David had respected him as God's chosen king and cherished Jonathan as a beloved friend. With Saul's death, David was anointed king over Judah, ruling from Hebron. Saul's remaining son, Ishbosheth, briefly reigned over Israel, but his rule crumbled, paving the way for David's unification of the tribes. David moved his capital to Jerusalem, making it the political and spiritual center of Israel. David's reign brought military victories, expanding Israel's borders and securing peace. He established a strong central government, bringing justice and prosperity to his people. David's desire to honor God led to the return of the Ark of the Covenant to Jerusalem. The joyous procession was marred by the death of Uzzah, who touched the ark to steady it. David, struck by fear and reverence, paused the journey, but later resumed with greater humility and celebration. The ark's arrival in Jerusalem marked a spiritual revival. David danced with abandon before the ark, symbolizing his wholehearted devotion to God. His wife Michal, Saul's daughter, scorned his display, straining their relationship. David's dream of building a temple for God was redirected by the prophet Nathan. God promised to establish David's dynasty forever, with his son building the temple instead. This covenant affirmed David's enduring legacy and God's favor upon his house. David responded with a prayer of gratitude and humility, acknowledging God's sovereign grace and mercy. David's greatest moral failure occurred when he saw Bathsheba bathing and succumbed to temptation. He committed adultery and arranged for her husband Uriah to be killed in battle. The prophet Nathan confronted David, exposing his sin through a parable. David, stricken with guilt, repented deeply. God forgave David, but decreed that his household would face turmoil. Bathsheba's first child died, but their subsequent son, Solomon, was beloved by God and destined for greatness. David's family faced ongoing strife, his son Absalom seeking revenge for the rape of his sister Tamar by their half-brother Amnon, killed Amnon and fled. Later, Absalom staged a coup, forcing David to flee Jerusalem. A bitter civil war ensued. Despite Absalom's betrayal, David instructed his men to deal gently with him. Absalom's death in battle left David heartbroken, mourning deeply for his rebellious son. In his later years, David ordered a census of Israel against God's command. Realizing his sin, David repented, but a plague struck the land as punishment. David's intercession and sacrifice on the threshing floor of Araunah halted the plague. This site later became the location of Solomon's temple. David spent his final years preparing for the construction of the temple, gathering materials and organizing plans. He publicly appointed Solomon as his successor, ensuring a smooth transition of power. He also imparted wisdom and guidance to Solomon, emphasizing the importance of faithfulness to God. As David's life drew to a close, he reflected on his journey. Despite his flaws and failures, he found solace in God's unwavering grace and forgiveness. His psalms, written throughout his life, express the depths of his faith, struggles, and devotion. David died peacefully, leaving a legacy of a united Israel and a promise of an everlasting dynasty. His life, a tapestry of triumphs and trials, remained a testament to the power of repentance and the faithfulness of God. David's story continued through his son Solomon, who built the magnificent temple and brought Israel to the height of its glory. The promise of an eternal kingdom found ultimate fulfillment in Jesus Christ, a descendant of David, whose reign embodies the true shepherd king.